Kicked out for sister's baby, exposed them, now dad's broke. I had just turned 16 a week earlier, and there was no party, no cake, not even a real happy birthday from my parents before they told me I had to leave their house. The reason was my older sister, Amanda, who was 22 and pregnant, 7 months alone. She's always been the one they favored, and I never questioned that, but what they did on my birthday still stunned me. We live in a house with 4 bedrooms, and they sat me down that morning to explain they needed my room for Amanda's baby. They said I'd be staying with my aunt from now on. I had always known they barely put in effort with me, but hearing them calmly say I was basically too old to stay in the house and that they needed space for the baby hit hard. I didn't think for a second they were joking. They were serious the whole time. They tried to soften it by saying they'd still pay for everything I needed and make sure I had food and whatever else, but I could not stay under their roof anymore. I asked why they couldn't use the guest room for the nursery, and after a bit of awkward silence, they told me they gave that room to Amanda's boyfriend. That meant the room setup was one for my parents, one for Amanda, one for her boyfriend, and one for her baby, nothing left for me. Amanda wasn't even there when all this happened, which I figured was intentional so she wouldn't have to deal with the guilt of seeing me get pushed out. We had never been particularly close, probably because of the age difference, but we were always civil. Still, if she went along with this and let it happen, maybe I had misjudged who she really was. I was hurt. It was supposed to be my birthday, and instead of celebrating, I was packing. I did not argue with them. I just said fine and went upstairs. They helped me pack, which felt less like kindness and more like wanting me gone faster. They even gave me a ride to my aunt's house, chatting happily on the way there while I stared out the window, saying nothing. When we arrived, they dropped me off and left without a hug, without a goodbye. My aunt was glad to have me. She has always liked me more than my parents ever did. She welcomed me inside, and after I settled in, I told her what had happened. At first, she did not believe me. I had to repeat it all, and when I did, her face changed completely. She went to the other room, said she had to make a call, and then I heard her really yelling, which was shocking because my aunt is the calmest person I know. Turns out she was on the phone with my dad, her brother, and she was furious because he had told her I came up with this idea myself. He said I had asked to live with her to give the baby space and that I was totally fine with it. That was the only reason she agreed to take me in, because she believed I genuinely wanted to be there. She is in her late 30s, unmarried, no kids, and lives alone, so having me there was no big deal to her, especially with my dad covering all expenses. She thought she was helping me out. Now she knew the truth, and she was livid. She laid into him on the phone, and after she came back, she looked like she had steam coming out of her ears. I felt crushed. Not just because I was lied about, but because it confirmed what I had always felt, that I did not matter to them. They bent over backward to keep Amanda happy, even kicked me out for her boyfriend, a grown man with a job and his own place. If they really wanted to make it work, Amanda could have moved in with him, but they insisted she stay at their house and cleared space by getting rid of me. It was painful, and I needed to let it out. So while my aunt was taking a nap, I grabbed my phone, wrote everything out in detail, and posted it online. I poured my whole heart into that post, not just what happened that day, but everything they had done over the years to make me feel like I was always second best. It was emotional, and I was crying by the time I hit publish. After that, I shut off my phone. I did not want to see what people might say. An hour later, my aunt woke up and came into the living room and asked if I had posted something. I told her I had, and that was the end of it. I turned my phone back on later and saw dozens of messages, some from family, some from friends, many from people I had not talked to in a long time. Most were supportive. Some even offered help, saying they were there for me no matter what. But then I saw the messages from my parents. They were furious. My dad sent me a long message telling me I was ungrateful, even saying he wished I had never been born. My mom's messages were similar, bitter and cold. The only one who messaged me with any decency was Amanda. She just said she wanted to talk in person, and that was it. I did not reply to any of them. I was too overwhelmed. I set my phone aside again and did not look at it for the next couple of days. Eventually, I blocked my parents. I knew they were legally responsible for supporting me until I turned 18, so I had no reason to keep speaking to them. My aunt was completely fine with that. If my dad tried to reach her during those days, she never mentioned it. We just moved on, like nothing happened, and that showed me she had my back. That was all I needed. For about a week, there was peace until today. As I was leaving school, I saw my parents waiting for me outside. They looked angry. My friends knew everything going on, so they walked out with me, kind of surrounding me so I would not have to deal with them if I did not want to. But my parents kept shouting my name, so I walked up and told them I did not want anything to do with them. They ignored that and told me to come home with them immediately. I had no idea why they suddenly cared, especially after making it crystal clear I was not wanted. It seemed like they were only doing this because other family members had seen the post and were judging them now. I told them I would not go anywhere until they told me the real reason they were acting this way. They said they did not want my friends to hear, so I told them to step back so we could talk privately. After my friends stepped away, my parents finally told me the real reason they had shown up. They were not there because they missed me or cared about what I was going through, they just needed me back so they could stay in the good graces of the family and keep their hands on the inheritance money they were supposed to get from my grandparents, because ever since I made that post, the truth had spread across the family like wildfire and eventually made its way to my dad's parents, who have a lot of money and were furious when they found out what my parents had done to me, and they warned my dad that if he and my mom did not fix things with me and start treating me right, then they would lose their share of the inheritance and everything would go to my aunt instead, since she had stepped in to take care of me without being asked and with no obligation to do so. And now my dad was in panic mode trying to reverse the damage, but the problem was he was still being selfish about it. Acting like dragging me back into their house was a favor to me when it was clearly only about saving their own reputation and money, and even then they were not smart enough to at least pretend to care, so I told them I did not care what happened to their inheritance and turned around and left while they yelled behind me, trying to get me to come back, but I was done listening, and when I got back to my aunt's place I told her what had happened and she was just as fed up with them as I was. And to keep this from happening again, she got in touch with a lawyer to talk about how we could go about changing custody because as things stood, my parents still had legal rights over me, which would need to change if I wanted to stay with my aunt permanently, and later that day I also called my grandparents to thank them for stepping in and supporting me, and I explained that while I appreciated what they were trying to do, I had no intention of moving back in with my parents because these last few days with my aunt had been the most peaceful I had felt in a long time, and it finally hit me how miserable I had been in that house, constantly overlooked and ignored, not treated cruelly exactly, but definitely treated like I did not belong, and I had spent so many years trying to tell myself that as long as I had a roof and food, I should not complain, but now I understood that being treated like I did not exist was its own kind of damage, and they reassured me that they would do everything they could to make sure I could stay with my aunt, and they even offered to cover anything I needed if my parents signed over custody, and that made me feel like I finally had people on my side, but of course that feeling did not last long because a few hours later I got an email from my dad, and while it was not cruel or hateful like his texts before, it was still frustrating because he was now saying that I never should have posted anything online, that I had created unnecessary trouble, that my aunt could have told my grandparents in private and spared them all the public humiliation, and now not only were my grandparents mad but other family members had turned against them, and even some of his co-workers had seen the post because I had tagged him and it showed up on their timelines, and he was basically telling me that I had embarrassed him at work and stirred up drama that did not need to exist, which to me just proved that he still did not get it, that he still thought this was about saving face instead of owning up to what they did to me, and all of this happened just because I told the truth about how I was forced out of my home on my 16th birthday so my sister's baby could have my room, and as much as it hurt to go through, I do not regret sharing it anymore because keeping it inside for so long had done more damage than I even realized, and now at least people know what happened and I am not pretending anymore, and just to add something for the people who asked why I never left that house before this or why I did not ask my aunt or grandparents for help earlier, the answer is simple: I never thought my situation was serious enough, because even though I was ignored and left out all the time, I was not being yelled at or physically harmed, so I convinced myself that I had no right to complain. I figured having a bed and meals meant I was lucky enough and should stay quiet, and I was scared that if I asked for help and they said no, and my parents found out, it would just make things worse at home, because my parents care more about appearances than anything, and I never wanted to embarrass them, which is why I stayed quiet and put up with everything. And as for my aunt, she never offered to take me in before because she did not want to overstep or make things awkward with my parents, and she was not sure I even wanted to leave, so we all just kept pretending things were fine. But now that the truth is out there and the situation forced everyone's age. And we are finally working on making it right, even if it is messy and complicated and late, and my aunt is in talks with her lawyer to try and get custody rights switched, and we know it is going to be a battle since my parents suddenly care about the inheritance now, but I feel confident going into it because my aunt and my grandparents are behind me, and my aunt has apologized more times than I can count since I moved in for not noticing how badly I was being neglected and not speaking up sooner, but now she is doing everything she can to fix it. At least now everything is out in the open with my family and I feel like I can finally breathe a little easier about whatever comes next. And then there is the situation with my sister, which I have not talked much about since the first post, but she had reached out before and said she wanted to meet up and talk, and at the time I did not know how to respond, so I just ignored her message because even though she had never treated me badly directly, she had always kind of copied our parents' behavior by being distant and detached, and I assumed that the whole situation with me being kicked out so she and her boyfriend and her baby could live more comfortably had to have come from her, so I thought that was it, that she had finally picked a side and it was not mine. But then a few days ago she messaged me again asking if I could come see her, and that caught me off guard, so I decided to call and ask what she really wanted, and I was surprised when she told me she had moved in with her boyfriend and was not feeling great physically and wanted to talk about everything in person if I was willing to come by. And curiosity got the better of me, so I said okay and went over to see her, and the first thing she did when I got there was apologize for never standing up for me, even though she had known all along that our parents clearly played favorites and always ignored me, and she admitted that she had seen how they would brush off anything I achieved and celebrate her instead. And that she had never said a word about it because she felt uncomfortable challenging them and because I always seemed to be doing fine on the outside, so she told herself it was not that bad. But now she realized how wrong that was and how much damage had been done, and she wanted to say sorry, and she also told me that she had no idea our parents were going to kick me out for the sake of giving her boyfriend and baby extra space, that she had never asked for that and that the plan had always been for her to stay at home temporarily and move in with her boyfriend after the baby was a few months old, but our parents had jumped ahead and done everything on their own without running any of it by her, and after I posted about it all, she realized she could not keep living there and packed up and left, which caused a big argument with them since they thought she was being disloyal and selfish, but she told them she never promised anything and they had made assumptions that blew up in their faces, and so now they were not speaking. And even though all this chaos went down, I respected her more for finally standing up for something, and she admitted she had been a pretty bad sister and regretted a lot of things, which I accepted because staying cold and angry forever would not fix anything, and she told me that, like my aunt, she was going to be in my corner moving forward, and hearing that actually meant something to me. And since then I have not heard anything from my parents. Not a word since my dad sent that last email, and I assume they have stopped trying because my grandparents called me not long after and said I would not have to deal with them anymore, that they would not show up at school or message me again, and I had not even told them about the email, so I figure they must have had a serious conversation with my parents and made it clear, and I do not know what they said, but clearly something changed because a few days later my aunt told me that my parents agreed to sign away their rights and give up custody, and now it is just a matter of finishing the paperwork, and I am honestly feeling a lot of different things about it. On one hand, it is a huge relief to finally feel like I belong somewhere and to not have to worry about being tossed aside again, but it is also sad in a way, like even if I knew deep down they did not care, it still hurts to have it confirmed so officially, but this is the path I chose and I know it is the right one, and fast. Forward a couple weeks and the papers are done and it is official. My aunt is now my legal guardian, and that is a win in my book, even though I also found out through her that the only reason my parents agreed to hand over custody was because my grandparents gave them an ultimatum. They could either keep everything quiet and risk losing the entire inheritance, or they could give up custody and still receive half of what they were originally set to inherit, and of course they took the deal, and honestly, I expected nothing less from them at this point, and I did not even feel angry anymore, just relieved that I no longer had to deal with them. And I am still in touch with my sister, who has been trying to keep her distance from our parents too because they have been bugging her a lot trying to fix things with her before the baby is born, but she told them she needed space and asked them to stop reaching out constantly, and the whole situation has kind of become a mess of its own, but all I can do now is gh about it because they made this whole mess themselves and now they are scrambling to hold on to whatever family they have left, but none of that is my problem anymore because I finally have peace, a safe place, and people who actually want me around, and that is all I ever really needed.